Joining us now directly from Moscow is Egor Kotkin. Egor, it's so great to see you. We've been talking a lot by Twitter. I've been reading some of your posts on Medium. We can actually throw one of those up on the screen. It's been really helpful to get your perspective. This one says what the West gets wrong in their reaction against Russia. It's been really valuable for me personally to have your perspective as someone on the ground there who is anti-war, but has a very nuanced view of the West, of Russia, of the role that ideology and history plays in all of this. But to start, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, people who, by the way, want to follow more of your work. You've just started a Substack and a Patreon, so we have those links down in the description. Just tell us who you are, what your view is of what's going on, and a little bit of background.
So my name is Egor Kotkin. I'm a socialist writer from Russia, yes. And I was following American politics for a while right now because so that happened historically, our politics, Russian politics and American politics was intertwined about 30 years ago in ways that are not obvious but very profound because basically the same recepts that neoliberal recepts of the Clinton administration that were implemented in the United States also, I assume with good intentions, were implemented in Russia as well. And we have basically the same fallout in Russia, and in many ways our politics, our culture, our problems are very similar to Americans, with that correction that we have a much poorer country and much weaker democratic institutes. So in a way, Russia right now is a preview what you will have if the current political course, neoliberal course, will play out itself in America. So because we can see that your institutions also being weakened by the growing power of oligarchy.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's very important for me to share because we are right now in the situation that basically was created 30 years ago. And when we're talking about this current war and everything around it, we have to understand that basically the history of the moment was already written. It's right now playing out. And the history started in the 90s because all the people that right now making decisions in Russia, it's increasingly small circle of the people around Putin and Putin himself. They were conditioned to power and to the way they think in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And first it was, of course, I can lay down short history, few milestones starting from 1992.
Yeah, go ahead.
The biggest historical mistakes that I see in the hindsight was, of course, implementation of the shock therapy on Russia in the 1992 instead of, say, Marshall Plan. I mean, you can see the difference of the approach to the country, how it works on the example of Germany. We have shock therapy on Germany after World War I. It ended in the revanchism in Germany, Weimar Republic, and then Nazism, and led to World War II. So two world wars were started by the same country. And then after the Second World War, instead of punishing Germans further, the politics changed completely differently, and it was Marshall Plan. It was basically help to German people to rebuild their country, and now Germany is the biggest peacekeeper in the Europe, and probably one of the biggest peacekeepers in the world. So you can't explain this some essentialist thing like German character, because German character in the first century, half of the century was militaristic and very violent. And the second half of the century, same people, different character, because they were put by bigger power in completely different conditions. So you have in Russia the same thing happened in the 90s, when basically Russia was put in the position not as hard but close to Weimar Republic. It was basically punished by the shock therapy for it was I don't know. It was kind of they were trying to help, of course. They think it was like helping by punishing Russia through shock therapy, but you have the basically turned it into ultranationalism not as let's say hard as it was in Germany in 1920s, so it took longer, but the same processes are working. So in 1992, it was shock therapy. It started Russian inequality, fastly rising inequality. In 1995, Russian oligarchy class was created. It was created with explicit purpose to help losing popularity Boris Yeltsin to win communist opponent on the presidential elections. So they created a class of big property owners who supposed to support lose grip of the power Yeltsin. They did it. But when the second term of Yeltsin was over, they thought, who will protect the interests further? So the third milestone was 1999, when the oligarchs created to help Yeltsin's regime explicitly chosen his successor. It was Putin.
Yes.
And the next part, of course, growing inequality led to harder grip, political grip. So in every election, you see this conflict when there is a candidate of power and candidate of people who criticize them for corruption. So then growing inequality calls to growing strength on the political system. So basically, they didn't intend probably dictatorial power in Russia, but they needed it. So it would keep the country political power with growing inequality in Russia, which is now completely went rampant.
So Igor, this is an important story that I wanted people to hear because it's one that from the West, people don't seem to really understand it into how exactly that happened. And I want to also be clear, you were against the war. You know, you're somebody who's risking yourself, even by speaking to us, against the regime. From the perspective of the U.S. response to Russia at this time, given your understanding of the oligarchy of Putin and now living in Moscow yourself, how do you see the Western response being received by the population? Is it having the intended effect that we are trying, which is to basically punish the Russian people and the Russian oligarchs and, you know, back some sort of uprising against Putin? In terms of your day-to-day conversations, what do you see happening on the ground there right now?
Well, on the ground, people, of course, see mostly what Russian propaganda showed them. And it shows the economic assault from the West. And basically, the whole propaganda that was mostly, how do you say, we were told that we live in Weimar Republic before the moment. But now we built the conditions of Weimar Republic when the West is acting like winners and trying to punish Russia for its existence. So basically, all the propaganda of Putin right now being justified in eyes of normal people. Normal people see this sudden and fast economic assault on Russia then when companies withdraw from Russia and make people unemployed. So prices are going up. It's not extremely high, but it's noticeable. But all of it, you can say in a way that Putin was laying down the conditions for this moment for whole 20 years. For whole 20 years, he was taking control over political system on the one hand, and on another hand, he was saying Russia through propaganda that the West intended to destroy Russia at this moment. So right now we have the situation when West actually tried to destroy Russian economy, and we have no internal instruments to challenge Putin in any way. So he's completely out of touch, not only with the most population of Russia, but with the broader circle of his support. This famous 1%, highest ranking families, highest earning families in Russia, they are not controlling Putin as well. So we have no means to influence Russian politics from the inside, and we all under economic assault from the outside. So we have no hold time for this.
So in a sense, what you're saying is that the economic sanctions which have been imposed, the indiscriminate ones that have hurt the Russian population, have in a sense validated the argument that Putin has been making to the population that, hey, the West is out to get us, the West is out to destroy Russia. And now you have,
it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, actually.
Right.
So,
right.
And so now, one
thing I wanted to ask you about, Egor, is, there's a lot of focus on the oligarchs. Of course, that term only gets applied to Russians, it seems like. We have our own oligarchs here that don't seem to get the same treatment. But there's a lot of focus on, hey, if we sanction the oligarchs, they're the ones who are closest to Putin. They're the ones who actually could be in a position to put pressure on him. There has been the sanctions after 2014 were sort of less significant. It was like, well, we'll put your name on a list, but there wasn't this concerted effort to, we're going to go after your yachts. We're going to kick you out of your fancy London apartments. There's a little bit more of that going on. Do you think that has any chance to succeed?
Yeah, thank you. That's why I started with this historic reference, because even if they want to put pressure on Putin, the reason why Putin's regime was created to prevent them, communists and leftists, from getting back in power in Russia. And right now, when we have this level of inequality, in 2020, by Credit Suisse data, it was 51% of richest Russian control 57% of common share of economy. So 1% over half of economy. And even if they try, even if they want, even if they succeed to change Putin, overthrow Putin, even if it will be the softest coup possible, or it will be hard coup, what's next? All the parties, all the political forces that were criticizing growing inequality in Russia, they will attack them, and they understand it. They afraid of Bolshevism. They afraid of this scary word Bolsheviks. You don't hear it from Russia, but the only context I hear it in Russia, actually, when sometimes in some conversation rich people among themselves or on TV, they say that basically they're afraid that Bolsheviks will come back and take everything from them. I mean, Bolsheviks won't come back, but the idea that they will be punished because it's impossible to rob the country for 30 years straight and don't have a big population that demands an answer for them and some accountability from them, it's impossible. So they're afraid of it. They understand that how little they have with Putin, they still be billionaires. They still be billionaires. They still be flying all around the world. They still be living much better than 99% of the Russian population. They understand it. And if Putin grip on power shatters, they are very likely to lose everything. Not only their property, but also their freedom. And they understand it. So that's why you have to put it in the context and look back in the 1996 when there was a close election between Boris Yeltsin, liberal candidate, and Gennady Zyuganov, communist candidate. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Russian Communist Party, but even them returning power is a scary proposition for oligarchy.
So my question to you, Egor, then is there any domestic pressure right now, real one, to end the war? We see here in the West the TV anchor, courageous people like yourselves who are willing to speak out, tens of thousands of protesters that have been arrested. But on a realistic basis, how do you think that the Russian population feels right now about the war?
On the realistic basics, I have to talk with my mother, and I have to not to talk with my mother on the war anymore, because she is saying me that I basically translate Western propaganda to her. And because you see, for 20 years, Russian propaganda built almost emotional, almost personal relationship between Putin and majority of Russian population. So when I'm saying that, basically saying the softest possible stuff, not the hard stuff about what's going on in Ukraine, she responds to me that Putin, she knows, couldn't do that. That Shoigu, his minister of defense, his secretary of defense, he couldn't do that. Those people couldn't do this. Therefore, this must be lies. So that's people who conditioned to basically have this private relationship, parasocial relationship with Putin's regime. So they can't believe it.
And what are what are the propaganda channels saying? What are they saying right now about what is actually happening in Ukraine? Because I know it's special military operation. You're not allowed to say the words invasion. You're not allowed to say the words war. So what are they telling the population is actually happening on the ground in Ukraine right now?
Well, basically, I don't follow closely Russian propaganda. It's too toxic. So, but my mom, basically, the main source of Russian propaganda. So basically, I told you the story. She believed that it was attempt to help people of Donbas region because they were bombed by Ukrainian government. So, and Russia intended a peacekeeping missions, and now it's being punished by the West for the attempt of peacekeeping in Ukraine. That's the story that my mother tells me. That's a story that she learned from the state TV. And she couldn't believe...
Any of the reports of military losses and deaths of Russian soldiers, I mean, nobody knows exactly what the numbers are there, but is any of that filtering its way home?
Last time I heard it was publicized about 500 dead. It was a week or two ago, and since then I didn't hear any updates, but of course it's hard to make out of it because Ukrainians also keep their casualties close to themselves. So it was around the same time when Ukrainians acknowledged the casualties. The Russian Minister of Defense acknowledged our casualties. It's called 500 dead. And since then, there was no update that I'm aware of. Official updates that I'm aware of.
Igor, let me ask you this. Is there a situation that Putin could say at home to accept some sort of peace deal? As in, given the propaganda right now, if Putin were to say, we demilitarized Ukraine, they agreed on NATO, it's over, we've signed a peace deal, do you see that as possible given the state of Russian propaganda, or are they preparing the people for a years-long war campaign at home?
I think, no, we won't prepare for that. And I'm being as critical of Putin as gets. I didn't expect as many of the people the actual invasion. And I completely acknowledge that I was in denial because all the facts were before us. But I was in denial about that, as most people. We weren't prepared for that. And I can tell assuredly that all the people who against this special operation or for it, they all will be unanimous sigh of relief when it stops.
Interesting.
For different reasons, but I'm pretty sure that will be unanimous sigh of relief because it's hitting hard people who against invasion. It's hitting hard people who pro-support Donbass, but still they understand that casualties are growing up and the whole war against us. That's not what people who even bought into this whole narrative about helping Donbass. That's not what they expected. They didn't expect that it will come with such price. So I believe that the end of this fighting will be met with approval, major approval in Russian people.
That's good.
But
That's
not really, because we live in a system which for 20 years was built with explicit purpose not to be influenced by any major sentiment in Russia. Close to totalitarian state in that sense. So right now it's much more important what is going on in the close circle. Basically, I don't believe in a role person in history powerful. I believe in historical materials and that history conditions by global processes. But sometimes due to these global processes, you have these pockets of power when one person put in this power in this pocket of this vacuum of power means a lot because the conditions that were created that one person mind, namely Putin in this situation, means a lot because he was put in these conditions. These conditions.
And Igor, last question for you. Speak to the political climate in terms of, we've been tracking the laws that have been passed incredibly draconian against being able to speak out against the war. We've been following the arrests that have been going on. I know your boyfriend was one of those who was arrested at an anti-war protest. So what is that climate like? And frankly, are you concerned about speaking to us and what could the potential repercussions be for you directly?
Well, that infamous law about fake news that basically criminalized open critique of the military operation in Ukraine. It was the most totalitarian law that we had, like, I don't know, since Soviet times, and it was heard loudly and clear around whole Russia. It's actually a funny story. My boyfriend largely apolitical, and I am a political person, but we both get calls from our mothers. Day after this law was implemented with warning, don't say much about this thing in Ukraine. So my mother, she knows that I'm political, so she warned me because of that. My boyfriend's mother, he wasn't ever political before, so yet she called him and said the same thing. So it was heard loud and clearly by the people of Russia, and it caused many of the prominent Russian independent liberal outlets to close basically in one day after decades, sometimes 30 years of work. So because it's a really harsh law. So right now Russia live under like military, in the informational space, we live under military conditions right now.
Well, Egor, you're a tremendously brave man in order to join us. Thank you so much for giving us this perspective. And if anything happens to you, I can assure you that we will be doing everything in our power here at the show in order to bring attention to that.
I actually would like to add some historical proposition from this. What I was starting to say about Germany conditions one way after First World War and another way after Second World War. I think we can't do much about what's going on right now. Literally, no one can. Even West, throwing this tantrum with sanctions, basically acknowledge this. They're powerless in this situation. But we must think what to do next, and what to do next shouldn't be Iranization of Russia, shouldn't be turn Russia in the worst conditions in the actual Weimar Republic, but some kind of Marshall Plan to help Russia and Ukraine both when this situation over, when this political situation changes, when there will be opening to change political situation, not to punish this part of the world, not to try to build an iron curtain and forget about that, because it will be impossible to forget. And in the question I would ask Western political leaders right now, what do you think how this situation right now, your actions will play out in 10 years? I'm pretty sure they have no answer. And we have the answer from history. Look at the history in 1920s, you'll know that it will bite back and much harder. So you can cut Russia loose even if you try. When the war over, when the war over, when the political situation allows some changes, Russia and Ukraine should be met the world with help, with support, with money, with institutions, with everything. You can help to rebuild. Not to another shock therapy or iron curtain. It won't work, and we already right now we see that it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think those are very wise words. We were nervous about you talking to us, but you insisted that you wanted to do it, and we are extremely, extremely grateful for your time and your analysis today, Egor.
I'm going to see what happens next.
we are all going to see what's happening next. And guys, like I said before, Egor set up a Patreon and a Substack. I've found his insights on what's going on really invaluable. So if you want to support him, if you want to follow him, go ahead and do that. We'll have the links in the description. Egor, great to see you. Great to speak with you.
Thanks, Egor.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Our pleasure.
Wow. I don't know if I would put myself in that situation, facing arrest like that, but he's a strong man, strong in his convictions, really interesting perspective. It's so valuable to talk to somebody who's literally on the ground and facing arrest and can give us a perspective that you're probably just not going to hear anywhere else. And just thank you all so much for supporting us. Look, what Egor is facing is not even close to anything in the United States, but we're facing, crazy censorious environment here too. So thank you all for your support. It enables us to be able to bring attention to people like him and all of that. So thanks very much.
Love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.